Second, shardless. A process migrates from the various shardling queues through its lifetime. So like this picture, okay, from ready queue to running state, then to waiting state, then to ready state again. So a process migrates from one queue to another during its lifetime. The operating system must select for shardling purpose processes from these queues in some fashion. The selection process is carried out by the appropriate shardler. Often in a batch system, more processes are submitted than can be executed immediately. Just now we already knew if there is only one processor in the system, at any time, at most, one process is running. So many processes may be in waiting time, in waiting queue, or maybe in ready queue. Okay. So often in a batch system, more processes are submitted than can be executed immediately. These processes are stored to a main storage device, typically a disk, where they are kept for later execution. So the long-term shardler, we also call it job shardler, selects processes from list pool, from disk, and loads them into memory for execution. This is long-term shardler. I want to emphasize it is also called job shardler. Its aim is for selecting processes from disk and load it into main memory, put it into ready queue. This is long-term shardler. And as for short-term shardler, we also call it CPU shardler. Selects process from the ready queue and allocates, or also we say it dispatches CPU. So you must know, short-term shardler selects the processes in the main memory from the ready queue. Okay, it's different from long-term shardler. Short-term shardler is invoked very frequently, such as once every 100 milliseconds. So it must be fast. And the long-term shardler is invoked very infrequently, such as seconds or minutes, so it can be maybe slow. Okay, the long-term shardler executes much less frequently. Minutes may separate the creation of one new process and the next. The long-term shardler controls the degree of multiprogramming. So what is the degree of multiprogramming? You must know this term. It refers to the number of processes in main memory. If the degree of multiprogramming is stable, then the average rate of process creation must be equal to the average departure rate of processes leaving the system. Thus, the long-term shardler may need to be invoked only when a process leaves the system. It is important that the long-term shardler make a careful selection. In general, most processes can be described as either I/O bound or CPU bound. These two terms you must know. As for I/O bound process, it spends more time of its time doing I/O than it spends doing computations. As for CPU bound process, in contrast, generates I/O requests infrequently, using more of its time doing computations. So it is It is important that the long-term scheduler select a good process mix of I/O-bound and CPU-bound processes. If all processes are I/O-bound, the ready queue will be almost always be empty. And the short-term scheduler will have little to do. Because as for I/O-bound processes, we know that I/O device works slowly compared with CPU. So if all processes in the ready queue are I/O-bound process, then maybe all processes are in waiting queue, not in the ready queue, waiting for I/O devices to finish their operations. So if all processes are CPU-bound in the ready queue, the I/O waiting queue will almost always be empty. Devices will go unused. Okay? And again, the system will be unbalanced. The system with the best performance will thus have a combination of CPU-bound and I/O-bound processes. On some systems, the long-term scheduler may be absent or minimal. For example, time-sharing systems such as UNIX and Microsoft Windows systems often have no long-term scheduler, but simply put every new process in memory for the short-term scheduler. The stability of these systems depends either on a physical limitation, such as the number of available terminals, or on the self-adjusting nature of human users. If performance declines to unacceptable levels on a multi-user system, some users will simply quit. Some operating systems, such as time-sharing system, may introduce an additional intermediate level of scheduling. This is medium-term scheduler. The key idea behind a medium-term scheduler is that sometimes it can be advantageous to remove a process from memory and thus reduce the degree of multiprogramming. Later, the process can be reintroduced into memory, and its execution can be continued where it left off. This scheme is called swapping. The process is swapped out and is later swapped in by the medium-term scheduler. Swapping may be necessary to improve the process mix, or because a change in memory requirements has overcommitted available memory, requiring memory to be freed up.